This is a podcast about the hardcore community.
Made by and for those who live authentic lives and embrace hard truths.
We archive the stories of the bands and people who make this lifestyle possible. I'm Josh Lyon.
And I'm Greg Benoit.
And this is the Hardcore Archive Podcast. Basic. I mean, I listened to the other interview you did recently while I was laying my daughter down, Getting It Out podcast.
Yeah.
So I'll try not to make it too similar to that. I'm pretty curious to ask about Boise. I'm sure everybody probably asks you about that when they first meet you, because Boise Hardcore is something we're not as familiar with in other parts of the country, I'm sure you can imagine. So
yeah, I feel like we played Tulsa last month, yeah. And even there, like I hadn't been to I'm trying to a way to word this word doesn't sound like an insult. I hadn't been to a more smaller regional hardcore fest in a while. And it reminded me a lot of Rainfest, whereas the bands from the Midwest that played it and in Tulsa, that by all purposes weren't big bands. They're younger bands. To me, they had the best reactions the whole weekend. Whereas there are some bands where I think that them they came from either the Northeast or California, and we were the only band from the Northwest that went. And I felt like some of those bands, every band had a good reaction, but it was kind of the thing where I would have expected them to have a better, bigger reactions, and maybe some of these smaller bands to not necessarily have as big of a reaction. And it really emphasized the regional aspect of hardcore and how a band in one area can be huge. And, you go to a different part of the country and not that many people have probably heard of them, or even if they've heard of them, aren't necessarily that into it per se. So it's definitely interesting.
if you don't mind, I feel like we should just keep this as part of the interview, because I think this is a good way to start the discussion. I had planned on doing a mini little intro. So I guess I'm Josh Lyons. Our guest tonight's going to be Devin Boudreaux from Rejection Pact. We're going to be talking a lot about his new album, or their new album, I guess. Can We Wait on Safe Inside? And like I said, I'm definitely curious to hear a lot about the Boise scene too, because it's something that I'm familiar with a couple of the obvious bands, but other than that, it's something new for me. So I guess, yeah, you were talking about the fest. We'll talk more about that in a little bit, but if you don't mind, like I said, I'm really curious about the whole Boise scene. So maybe tell us a little bit about that and kind of how you got involved with that eventually too.
All right, so I moved here in 2007 from Anchorage, Alaska, which getting into hardcore and that whole thing, especially in that era, is a very weird, that's a whole different can of worms. But whenever I moved here, I had visited here the year before. One of my good friends that I met in Anchorage was from Boise. So one summer I came down to visit, and at least to me, hardcore felt very poppin' here at the time. I think I was down.
I'm sorry, I want to pause real quick though. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you this. So were you already getting into hardcore in Alaska, or you got into it eventually? Okay, so that's even more curious. Was there a scene there too, or were you guys just finding out about shit through the internet and downloading and stuff, or?
So I started going to punk and new metal and just fishnet shirt, not fishnet hardcore now, but baggy, being that it was Alaska was so isolated, it was just a hodgepodge of weirdos, I remember a lot of the first shows I was going to being a ska band would play, and then a new metal band would play, and then a Fat Wreck style punk band would play, and then a Nirvana sounding kind of just garage aggressive rock band would play. But me and my friends kind of just discovered it was definitely a transplant type city. You had there was a pretty big military base up there, so you had a lot of army brat kids that were up there, and almost all my friends that I ended up getting to becoming friends with and hanging out with I want to say not a single one of them was actually like from Alaska. Like I wasn't originally from Alaska. I'm originally from New Orleans, but my parents got divorced and I moved there when I was like 3. But we kind of all just got into hardcore through, at least for me, it was like the Punkorama comps. That is specifically what I remember getting me into hardcore. And then like movies, like I was talking to someone about this the other day, the Escape from LA soundtrack had like Civ on it. And at the time I didn't know that was hardcore. I just thought it was like punk and I liked it. But I could be wrong, but I kind of feel like me and my friends were the first people that like started like an actual like, okay, this is like the hardcore scene, as opposed like, 'cause I remember there was one band that I would identify, or 1 or 2 bands that I would identify as hardcore bands, but I don't think that they would necessarily identify, like they liked hardcore, but I don't know. They gave me the vibe very much like we're like too cool for hardcore, like we're above that. We're just like we're a band, you know? Like they were really into Converge and like a lot like I don't know. They were sick and I wish they had their like some recordings of their music online, but no, my friends and I kind of like we started bands, like we were the first people at shows that were like not push moshing, you know? And me and my friends like some of my friends here will talk about that now. Like younger people don't know the struggle of going to shows where no one is into like people dancing or whatever. And like every show you just know this is gonna be an issue every time. And like that in a weird way was like fun, you know, and like that was like a big like looking for like, oh, is it like are we gonna get in a fight? Is there gonna be a fight? Like this is dumb. I hate having to deal with this, but at the same time, like this is weirdly fun and like appealing to me. But yeah, like we started bands. I had done a couple of bands prior to moving here. One of them was like a Poison the Well, Hopes Fall, like very Trustkill Records type stuff. And then the second band I did was much more in line of like Youngblood Records and like Locking Out and like Bridge 9 stuff. Like it was like like the primary songwriters for both bands were the same, but it was like given our age, it made a lot of sense of like, oh, we're really into breakdowns. And then the second iteration of the first band was we got into like On Broken Wings and like Black My Heart and stuff like that. And then we just got like we were writing songs around mosh parts. And then within a year, we were like, all right, we just want to play fast hardcore now. And like we're not really gonna have like breakdowns as much. We're gonna have more like 2-step parts and like circle pit parts. But yeah, so whenever I moved here, initially, so my friend that I met, to me, Boise Hardcore was like popping at the time. And the plan was when I moved here, we were going to start a band. He already had a band, and they're like, oh, we're going to kick out our singer, and then you're going to sing. We'll have a new band. Like, you're going to sing in the band, but we're going to kick him out, and you're going to sing. I was like, okay, sick. And then that band ended up fizzling out. So I started a band right off the get-go when I moved here, which was pretty fun. I feel like that helped me get like acquainted to like knowing more people here quickly. So I moved here in like May of 2007, and we played our first show with a new band because that band fizzled out, like I said. So we started a different band, and we played our first show in September of 2007.
So were like a lot of like tours like stopping through Boise and stuff back then already and whatnot, or?
Yeah, we had a venue here called The Venue, and I feel like at the time that was, I don't think like, you know, because like even within hardcore, especially, I feel like more so back then, there was so many weird sub scenes of like, oh, this is like the fast hardcore stuff, and then this is the more like commercialized like metalcore stuff, but it's all like under, to a lot of people that's just hardcore. And then you had like, not to say, I mean there's still that now, but not anywhere close to I think back then. But there was a lot of, at least to me, a lot of tours were stopping through. We had this consistent venue, hardcore shows were getting good turnouts. Obviously, there was like the house show scene here where those shows were much smaller. But when shows were at the venue, there'd be like anywhere, even a small show there, even a minimum, there'd be like at least 100 kids. But the year that I moved here, a lot of people started turning 21. And so within the first year of me being here, I saw like show turnouts drastically shift. And the most interesting thing was the year before when I'd visited, even from 2006 to 2007, the show attendance seemed way smaller. Like I remember when I visited, like there was a show every other day when I was like here. And even the small shows had pretty good turnouts. And like even if there's like I remember I went and saw, I'm trying to think who played. It might have been like Hoods or something. And it was at a small venue. And even that there was like 40 or 50 people, but like almost everyone at the show was like moshing and like seemed psyched. But yeah, so like by 2009, I feel like shows here were pretty dead. Like I specifically remember 2009 being a very dark lull period for Boise. And then 2011 things started popping up again. And that was good for a couple years. And then kind of like the like early or like we'll say like mid 2010s, it felt, at least to me, like kind of bleak. And then kind of around, I feel like kind of I'm trying to think of like, because they're like, when I look back at it, there was definitely a clear shift of like when things started to get better. I kind of feel like in 2019, at least to me, that's when like Boise Hardcore felt way more positive and like just like cooler in a way that I hadn't felt in a long time. And then after COVID, air quotes after COVID, whatever, that's when the first show back after that, like that just felt way different. And since then, I feel like it's been like a consistently like positive uphill, or not uphill, like positive graph trending or whatever, like shows, every show feeling like a little better and like a little cooler. And I'll like reference one specifically. So we played a show back in October with like Drug Church and Gel and Scal and Public Opinion. And I didn't know almost everyone at the show other than like the handful of my friends that were there, but I didn't know most of the people in the room, and they're all young people that I didn't even normally see at like other shows. And that felt like, at least to me, that felt like a very big stark difference even within the last year of shows here, of like, okay, I don't know who any of these people are. They're all really young. They seem to know who all these bands are. Like tons of people are up front singing that I've never seen before. And then we played a show, the last show we played here, I think it was like, this was the night before Thanksgiving. And there was quite a few people at that show that I think were like from that Drug Church show. I'm like, I don't recognize these people either, but they look like the type of people that were at that show. And so I don't know, like Boise right now just feels very like young, and people just seem excited. And like, I mean, I feel like that's how most places feel right now, or at least that kind of seems like that's like the common theme of like, oh, there's a nice influx of like younger, excited people that don't really care about like, we'll say like scene politics and like that, all that kind of stuff, which is cool. But I feel like Boise is especially just like, for the longest time, it just was like there weren't any like new kids coming around. It was just the same people. Like I could go to a show and I would know every person there.
I mean, what you're saying about the general excitement and a lot of young people being involved seems to be, like you said, the theme that I've heard a lot too. I mean, I'm on the other side of the country in Rochester, and I've interviewed a lot of people from Syracuse this year too. And well, I guess this will come out next year, but whatever. This last year, I've interviewed a lot of people from Syracuse, and just the general theme people have been saying is that since things have reopened and whatnot, it's been a lot of excitement. We haven't had a ton of all ages shows here because that's kind of an issue here. Most of our venues are like 16 or 18 plus, but the shows that I've been to, and one specific example I can think of is back in March, I'm thinking of what you're talking about too. And this could be a bad example because I feel like Zulu played here, and I feel like a band like that might draw like a more of a mixed crowd anyways, like a
Yeah,
diverse crowd. And I forget who they were touring with. I can't even pronounce her name, but it was some like industrial or like, I don't want to sound like a dick.
I know it's what you're talking about.
Yeah, so it might have been because of that too. But I remember walking in there and just being like, wow, like I recognize like 2 or 3 people, but like it's a really diverse crowd. And like the couple local hardcore shows that I've seen too has been like that too, where it just seems more like inclusive and diverse than things were before. I mean, I know you coming like from like Boise and listening to whatever you did, like your scene seems to have always been kind of diverse like that too. But it seems like for us, it's getting back to that now too. So which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because like before COVID, at least to me, it didn't really ever feel like lineup wise. Like Boise is not a big enough city to have like we're only gonna put on like strictly hardcore bands on the show for like a local show. I mean, obviously, if it's like a touring package coming through, yeah, you could, depending on like how many local openers they're gonna have, you could only have like the hardcore bands play. But for a local show, especially, there weren't enough local hardcore bands to like make its own thing, let alone like getting, like you're talking about earlier, getting into these like, micro scenes of like, oh, this is like the fast stuff, this is like the beatdown stuff that like Boise's never been like that. And like the first show we played after COVID, when we came, like it was an all local show. It was like a death metal band. A ton of young kids started bands during COVID, and they're all death metal bands, but they're not even like, because I feel like right now like death metal is really popular within hardcore. I feel like these bands were way more just straight up death metal. Like these weren't people that like were from the hardcore scene that like, oh, like I feel like people in hardcore, a lot of people have always liked death metal, but these were just like young 16 to 18-year-old kids that were into death metal. But we played a show and it was like, well, a Soul Sick, our traditional death metal band, us, a band that I would say is more online with like newer Code Orange or like Sea Space Cowboy type stuff. And then my buddy's band, Grave Titan, Hunter, our guitar player, plays bass in that band, and they're more like Fuming Mouth or like Gate Creeper type stuff. But there was probably like between 200 to 300 people there for just like a local show. And I remember we were like, yo, this is probably the biggest show we've played in Boise, and like, not like ever, but like at the venue we're playing at specifically like a long time. Like this is crazy. And they're all young kids there. Like it's like, I don't know, I feel like that show, at least like talking to the other people here too, that show kind of set the tone of like, well, this is what we should do here. Like we need to just do more mixed bills. Like, because every band had a good reaction. Like we definitely sounded the most out of place on the show out of anyone. And like people, like everyone seemed to be having a good time to where like I think that really solidified, let's start doing this more. And then since then, a lot of the shows have been mixed build shows. And over the last year, year and a half, I think maybe 2 years now, I'm really bad with like math on top of my head, but you're seeing a lot of those kids now that weren't, air quotes, hardcore kids then, that are now showing up in like hardcore shirts and like dancing and like coming to shows that don't have like death metal bands on them or whatever. They're going to the hardcore shows now, and like they're kind of transitioning, at least to me, into more just like self-identifying like hardcore kids. And I think that's sick. Like obviously you should listen to all different types of music, but hardcore honestly is the sickest thing. So I'd yeah, like I remember like being younger and like being really into like, saying like punk and like new metal and shit. But once I like discovered hardcore, I was like, this is way cooler than all this other stuff. And like definitely like that was like, okay, this is the personality trait that I'm fucking with now. And we're kind of like, we're noticing that more with like a lot of the younger kids here, like that clear shift over time, and it's sick.
I've always been kind of gatekeeper-esque in that like things that I'm into, I kind of want to stay like underground and cool or whatever. But like as I've gotten older, like there's two things that I'm super into that I like seeing be more mainstream. Like the vegan thing has like obviously blown up in the last like 15 years, and I've been a vegan for about that many years, so I'm excited to see more people adopt that lifestyle. But like hardcore, even like going back like 20 years or so when it was starting to really get popular, it was like, oh man, what the fuck? But now, like, as you see more people getting into it, and especially like you being a band and me having a podcast and me like booking shows again next year, like, obviously we want to see this grow. I mean, my only concern is like, I don't want to see like people get into it for like the wrong reason per se, and then only be here for like a stepping stone or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, because it seems like with hardcore getting bigger, like, I feel like certain people are going to see like bands like Code Orange and Turnstile are perfect examples of bands that like started off as small hardcore bands and now they're huge. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want people to be like, oh, well, we could do that too. And then like they just use the underground for like a year or two. And like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it just, I don't know.
What I like, what some of my friends here, I don't even think they've published an episode yet, but they have like a metalcore podcast that they're doing, but it's very specifically of like a certain era of metalcore. And I did a thing with them the other day. We were going through all these like kind of like like the whole, when they were like, oh, this is like, I think they called like fuck, what was it, like the new wave of like American heavy metal or whatever that they were calling it, and like Unearth and like As Lay Dying and like all those bands like broke through, and just the amount of like third and fourth tier metalcore bands that popped up after that, were like, we're listening to some of the records, like this band clearly has no clue what hardcore is, and they just heard As Lay Dying, and these sound like just like metal dudes that were like, oh, we're gonna mimic this and we're gonna throw breakdowns in there because we think like that's what people want. And like the amount of unnecessary like soloing and stuff, like this is all derivative of something that isn't like core related at all. But um I kind of like how that like that fills it out really quickly, I feel. And I kind of think that like that'll probably happen within hardcore. I think that you're gonna have some people that like, I don't even necessarily think it's gonna be people starting bands, but I think you're more so gonna see like, we'll just say like industry types kind of snooping around, like picking like kind of doing, I guess, like their market research into like what bands could pop and why, and kind of giving these bands pushes where like one thing like, so like we'll use like Turnstile for example, without like beating that to a dead horse if like everyone does, but like they still regard like, I don't know, I'm trying to think the right way to word. I was talking with my friend the other day about this. There's nothing wrong with like moving beyond hardcore if you're like if like you're from hardcore. Like I think Foo Fighters fucking rock, and they're a great band, and they have footing in hardcore. And I think a lot of the coolest rock bands, I think, have some sort of footing within punk or hardcore, and I think that carries over into how you like conduct your band and how you treat people and whatnot. And I think that with Turnstile, like I think if you have these bands that like break through and put people onto guitar music, because guitar music hasn't been cool for a very long time, like good guitar music, I think that they'll conduct their bands in ways to where even if like they grow beyond like I mean they already have, but like even further, like to a lot of people, like, oh, they're just like a rock band, or they're just like a punk band or whatever. I think they'll do it in a way to where it's not like cringy. Like they still put on for hardcore, and like I think they're still gonna want to play like smaller shows like when they can, because if you're coming from this scene, you're going to miss that intimate aspect of like, you know, being a singer in a hardcore band. The coolest thing is not having to sing, like having someone else do it and like just like jumping around and shit. But yeah, I mean, I think at least to me, there's a lot of big business aspects that are already like infiltrating hardcore that I personally don't fuck with, and I think is really weird. But I also think that's, at least to me, almost feels like more of a generational thing as opposed to like, oh, these bands are getting big now. So like, I just kind of think that depending on your entry point to hardcore, I think some of the ethos is going to be different, and I think that that's why it's imperative, at least to me, to like, you'll hear a lot of stories of everyone had like that old head, friend or whatever, like that like put you on this stuff. I think that's more important now than ever to like, because most old heads, at least to me, are fucking dumb and annoying and weird and like out of touch. But there are ones that understand it, and I think it's imperative for those ones to like pass on the wisdom of. And it's kind of crazy too, like when I was 18, I made friends with this guy who's like 21, who like he felt light years older than to me. Like he had like a big boy job, had money, like he'd always be flying out to shows and stuff, and like he just seemed light years older than me. But I'm like, you're only like 3 years older than me. Like that's, but to I don't know. I think that like, I don't know if you've noticed it, but younger bands having booking agents that don't need booking agents, that have publicists and all this other shit, where I'm like, just do it yourself. That's the coolest thing about hardcore, is it's totally tangible for you to do that. Like talking with friends who have been in like non-hardcore bands touring, and then the comparison to like touring as a hardcore band, they're like, it's night and day different. Like it's so easy to like book a hardcore tour and have it be like, you'll break even, like, or at the very least the shows are going to be cool, like you might lose some money, but like the shows are going to be cool. Whereas like booking like an indie tour or something like that, or like being in, I guess, like a rock band, and them just like the amount of horror stories I've heard from friends like doing those kind of tours, to where I'm like, yeah, if you're in a hardcore band, you should, and like, unless you're trying to be like, I kind of think, unless you're trying to do it like full time and make a career out of it, which is kind of weird in itself, you should just do everything yourself. Like, I don't know why you wouldn't. Like, all these people that are doing this now as jobs, like booking agents and like managers, like they got all those skills from doing it themselves. It wasn't like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's definitely weird to see. I mean, I feel like the publicist thing has kind of been around for a while, because that's something with the podcast that we've been talking about. Because I did a fanzine years ago, and like a lot of the labels had them, and I don't know. I get what you're saying though. Definitely, the DIY is definitely the way to go. And
Well, even like with a label, I think that makes sense. Like, because I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, it's not a business, but it is a business. You know what I mean? Like, you're not trying to like lose money. Like, if you can break even or like make money, that's great. But like, you don't want to lose money. So I think, but I'm saying, like, I just hear about a lot of like bands having publicists, where I'm like, that's wild. Like, if you're on a label that has a publicist, like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, of course they're going to be pushing you. Like, why wouldn't they?
or you'll
But
see a band with like 1,000 followers on Instagram, and it'll say like management and booking and like 6 other things, and you're
yeah,
like, you
that
guys
to
don't
me,
even
that's
have
like,
like,
that's true local band energy. Like, honestly,
yeah.
like, you know what I mean? Where it's like, you've played 4 shows, no one was there. Of course you have all this stuff. Like, why wouldn't you?
Yeah. So I guess speaking of bands, we'll get into Rejection Pact momentarily, but I'm just curious, like, have you been like actively playing in bands pretty much the whole time you've been in Boise then too?
Off and on. So I sang in a band called Composure. That was the band I started when I first moved here. We were around for like a year and a half. Like, we played cool shows, like, because at the time that's when I was helping. I was booking shows sometimes. Like, I think the coolest show we played, our first show was with Trash Talk and Modern Life is War. That was fun. Um, the last 2 shows we played, I think, was I booked Have Heart and Verse, a house show. We played with them, and then we played with Kids Like Us in a garage, like, at my friend's house in their driveway. But like, because at the time when we first started the band, we were like the only hardcore band here. Or no, sorry, not only one, but we were like the only new one, I should say. Until where kind of when they're looking for like locals, like we were lucky we could get on like almost everything. And then if I was booking the show, I would like honestly looking at the locals, I'm like, yeah, we're just gonna play. Like but and then Charlie, our drummer, and I were in a band called Alone, and we did that for like a year and a half, around like 2013 or 2014, something around. It was like mid 2010s, and we did that band for, like I said, like a year, probably a year and a half, 2 years, and then Rejection Pact is basically what him and I wanted Alone to sound like, because even like we were pulling from the same like influence, well, more or less, for that band as we are for this band, but that band, Cooks in the Kitchen wise, had a few more different influences coming in from different places, whereas like with this band it was much more like, this is specifically what we're going for, like we're not really going to necessarily deviate from that a whole lot, like we'll build off of that, but we're not like trying to like incorporate these other influences into the band.
Now you reference a house show, a driveway show, like, so were you guys doing a lot of like DIY type
Yeah.
shows up until recently, or?
So during that era, like I was saying, we had the Boise venue, but like once people started going to like I was saying, people like the turnouts for shows dropped drastically. So that venue kind of stopped booking hardcore shows unless it was like a big package tour. And that was the type of thing where it wouldn't even be a hardcore tour. It'd be like, oh, here's a metalcore tour, and they might have a hardcore band on it. Like I remember seeing TUI with Every Time I Die, which is really crazy because like that was right when they were like blowing the fuck up. And I feel like me and 3 other people were the only people at the show that knew who they were. And I'm like, this is insane. Like I saw this band a year before, and like they were headlining like a show, and they're the opener, and like saying how you're saying earlier, like the very like the kind of gatekeepery aspect of hardcore. Like I loved at that show that it felt like, this is for me. This isn't for everyone else at the show. I know about this. I'm way cooler than all you other fucking losers here. Like, but no, so once they stopped booking like most like hardcore shows, all the shows at that point basically became DIY. Like most of the shows I saw here probably from 2007, like end of 2007 up to like 2012, most of those were house shows. Like every now and then you'd catch a random show at the venue, you know, like I was saying, it's like an opener, some sort of package tour. But yeah, it was kind of just like that was the norm. And I think that, at least to me, I love house shows, and I think that they're really cool, but I definitely think that deters younger people from going. You know, like even being an adult and like going to a house show, like depending on where it's at, if it's not like there was a punk house down the street from me that was doing shows like mid 2010s, and I felt weird going to every show there because I wasn't friends with the people that ran that house, and most of the shows that they booked were not like there were lots of bands I liked that played there, but the vibe was not my vibe per se, to where like I felt weird every time walking into the backyard and walking into that house and like going to a show there. But we've had the thing with Boise, and I think this is like definitely like a problem for a lot of smaller, we'll say like B and C list market cities, is venue consistency. You know, like you were saying, oh, we don't like with all ages shows here where you're at, we've had consistent bar venues since I've lived here that are still open, that were open then, that they're open now. We have, I feel like y'all had the Knitting Factory out there in like New York, right? I don't know.
That was New York City. I feel like
Yeah,
I
it's
might
like,
have seen one. I think there might have been one. I might have seen one show there. I don't want to say the band because they're semi-canceled at this point in their careers. or what have you, but that was like 2008-ish. I think that was Knitting Factory. I'm not sure, but anyways, go on.
We
Sorry.
have the knitting factory here. They don't really do like every now and then they'll get like a hardcore punk show, like, but that's not like the norm for them. So, but we've had this one venue, the Shredder, that's been like the one consistent venue. Like usually if we've had venues pop up, they'll be open for a year or two. They realize there's no real money in this unless you're serving alcohol, you know. The Shredder is an all ages venue. They do serve alcohol and they've been open, I feel like, for at least, I say I booked a show there, or I helped book a show there in 2011, and that was, I think, the first show that the venue wasn't even open yet. Like they didn't have a stage yet. It was more or less like a concrete room, but we knew that like it was going to be a venue. And I remember we had a show fall through the venue was supposed to be at, and so like hit the dude up last minute and let us throw it there. But that's been the one consistent venue. Like basically 95% of shows here are at that venue now.
Yeah, like I said, I'm getting back into. I booked one show over the summer, and next year I'm gonna. Well, this year I guess as this airs, I'm gonna be booking a bunch of shows, and that's my one concern. Is I talked to the one venue and I was like, so we can do 16 plus, right? She was like, well, it's usually 18, and I've seen other flyers advertised at that place for 16, but even 16, it's like there might be those couple kids. Like I'm 41, so I'm not going to be recruiting any teenagers to come to any shows by any means. Don't get me wrong, you know what I mean? But
Yeah,
I still want them to be able to go, obviously, because I was fucking 14, 15 when I discovered all this nonsense that I'm still actively seeking out now many years later, so I definitely want to be able to hand it down. So it's definitely, we'll figure it out.
I feel like now more than ever that if you'd have a couple of years ago, the likelihood I would have thought there'd be even a 16-year-old at a hardcore show I'd be like fairly unlikely, like, to be honest. Whereas I feel like now the likelihood to have a 12 or 13-year-old at a show really isn't that far-fetched, especially depending on like what part of the country you're in, you know what I mean? To where I think just having the option for them to be included, I think like is important,
Yeah, being a dad now, having the idea of having kids that young going to shows makes me a little nervous. So, all right, I guess we've been kind of slowly talking about the band a little bit. I definitely want to talk about the record and whatnot. But obviously, I'm assuming a lot of my listeners probably aren't super familiar with you guys. So let's kind of take it back and just kind of tell me like how Rejection Pact formed, and we'll just kind of go from there, I guess.
So, sorry, 1 second. We formed, I want to say fall. So Ralph and Charlie, our drummer, Ralph, our bass player, they were in a rock band called Step Brothers, and they had been, I forget how many years they'd been in a band at that point, but like, I was on a tour with them, like just like a Northwest tour, and they were like decided like they knew they were breaking up, and it was kind of like, this is our last little run we're doing. And like I'd been in bands with Charlie before, but that was the first time that I really I knew Ralph, but we never like hung out, and that was the first time we were all hanging out and we all got along really well. And we kind of started talking like, oh, it'd be cool to start like a hardcore band. Like Charlie and I would always talk about, oh, we should do this type of band or that type of band. Like it'd be cool. Like even just like, let's just record a demo, like we'll put it out. Like maybe we'll find people to be in the band after, type thing, because he can play every instrument. And then, so we were all, yucking it up and getting along. And then, so it's kind of decided, okay, when we get back, because I think it was in August of that summer, like when we get back, let's actually like write a demo or something. And I was hiking with my friend Nathan, and I was telling him about it, and then he was like, oh, that sounds cool. Like, could I possibly try out on guitar? He just gotten out of a long-term relationship, and he's played guitar forever, but he's like, I've never actually been in like a band. Like, he like listens to a lot of like hardcore and punk and stuff. He was just like, I've just never been in a band, you know, like I kind of at this point, like I feel like I should do it, like, because he's the same age as me. He's like, he's just like, getting to have a long-term relationship, you know, like I feel like I should do this. Like I have this free time on my hands now. And I was like, yeah, man, sure. Like, you know, this is kind of like I think at the time the band, I said, I think we're going to we're going for like a carry-on sound. I think it was like my reference point at the time. And he was like, okay, sick, yeah, I'm down with that. And then we got together because Charlie and Ralph already had a practice space and everything. And it like clicked for us. Because like Nathan knew Ralph and Charlie, but I don't think he'd ever really hung out with them either. But we got together, we started jamming. We recorded our demo in 2007, like November of 2017, and put it out in January of like 2018. But we'd written in the span of I think 2 or 3 months like 8 or 9 songs. Like we recorded, like I forget how many we recorded, but we put 5 or 6 out on the demo. And then we played our first show in January. We played our second show with Pennywise, which was crazy. Like it was at the Knitting Factory. It was like a huge show, but like I remember I hit up the venue when I saw it got announced, and it was just like I emailed them like just like a kind of jerk off email, like, hey, you know, like we'd love to play, blah blah. Like if you need a local opener, you know, we're like fast. You know, I think that like the people that would go to the show would definitely fuck with it. And they're like, we don't need any local support, you know, thanks. So I'm like, all right, it's fine, no worries, you know. If something changes, you know, just let me know. And then the week of the show, they emailed me, like, hey, do you guys still want to play? And we were like, yeah. And like, well, can you do pre-sales? And we're like, yeah, we're not going to do that, but like, we'll play. And then they're like, okay, that's fine. But so then like we rushed to get like shirts printed, and we like, luckily I think Ralph or Charlie had a tape duplicator, so we pressed some copies of our demo really quickly. And that was crazy, you know, like a lot of local punk bands got real big mad at us about that for playing, because we hadn't like earned it or whatever. And I'm like, we literally sent them an email, I'm sorry that you guys don't know how to do that or whatever. Like it, like we didn't grease, like I literally just hit them up and asked, like, you guys could have done the same thing. But yeah, we just kind of kept writing at that point. We recorded our 7-inch that summer ourselves. Like we did everything ourselves on that. And then I don't remember when we got linked up with Safe and Sight. It was like at some point that summer, I think.
That
But
7-inch is that's on Safe and Sight too, though, right? The 7-inch?
yeah.
Yeah.
So like we had already like had it. I want to say by the time we were talking with them, we already had it done. And we are just planning on self-releasing it. Like, because it's 10 songs, so we wrote it like an album. Or, you know, but we didn't expect anyone to like physically put it out. So we were just like, yeah, we're gonna put out an album. Like it's fine. And like we did a tour we did like a Northwest tour that summer. But then whenever they hit us up, like, oh, we've had like, I forget the exact number, but the email went something along the lines of, we've been told by like numerous people to like, your name keeps coming up. Like, and we're like, oh, that's crazy, that's sick, cool. And they're like, you know, do you have any plan, like, do you have any new music, blah blah? And we're like, oh, we have a LP or an album that we just recorded, but like we were just gonna put it out ourselves, probably on tape or whatever. But then they're like, well, we'll put it out as a 7-inch, like, you know, it's short enough, it'll all fit on a 7-inch. And so we were like, cool, sick. But so we put that out in April of 2019. We did a West Coast tour, like I think the next month. And then we did a Western Canada tour 2 months after, like a couple months after that during the summer. And then we had a bunch of cool stuff lined up and COVID happened. Like we were supposed to play some fests and shit. And then obviously none of that happened. But I don't know, it's cool. I mean, I think, sorry, that was a lot of word vomit of like the band, but I don't know, like we just kind of, when we started the band, because like Ralph and Charlie like have very much like a punk background, or more like punk leaning, like hardcore, you know. To where when we started the band, we wanted it to always be fast. Well, Nathan does too, actually. He like all the hardcore he likes is like fast hardcore, but we wanted the band like, we're always like, the songs have to be fast, like they're not gonna be like, we're not, none of our songs are gonna like drag like at all, and we're gonna be pulling specifically from Northwest hardcore mid to late 2000s sound, as well as like Rivalry Records, and like kind of just the whole like early Bridge 9, like Death Wish, um like I know we've gotten comparisons to like some Locking Out stuff, which I'm like, that makes sense. Like we like that shit, so I mean I'm sure that like comes through. And then like some like, you know, like Youngblood Records type stuff, like just really pulling from like, we'll say 2004 to 2008 is really like what we're pulling from. And um ever since we started the band, we made it very apparent that we like wanted our songs to be about stuff. I mean, that sounds kind of like, I guess, like vague, but we didn't want to have songs about like ex-girlfriends and like the scene, and like, you know, like just a lot of, I guess, like hardcore. Like, I mean, we do have some stuff on our older songs where it's like that's inescapable. Playing in a hardcore band, like you're gonna have, but we definitely, ever since the demo, we're like, we want more often than not our songs to like be about things outside of hardcore, and we wanted that to be like more of a focal point of the band.
What's
I
weird
think
is most of the bands that you remind me of, which are all early 2000s bands, are all bands that like weren't singing about like being stabbed in the back or like had like serious lyrical topics, you know, like a lot of the bands you mentioned. And then, like I said, it's funny because I kind of had in my mind like what you guys influences were, and then I heard the interview you did on that other podcast, and you started talking about all the rivalry bands, and I was like, well, I guess I could see that too. In the Northwest, obviously makes sense because you're from there, but I think a lot of these bands that I'm more thinking of were probably influencing those other bands, like Suicide File, obviously, and even with the more melodic stuff on the newer album, I think even Bane to a certain extent too. You know what I mean? So, and then
Bane definitely. I specifically know Bane for the new record.
yeah,
I want,
and then
yeah, I think I could be wrong, but I feel like, so for this record, Charlie wrote some of the guitar stuff for the new record, and I feel like him and I were talking about Bane as he was writing. He's like, I've been listening to a lot of Bane lately.
yeah, no, I definitely, because I mean, even like not Give Blood, but the one before that, it all comes down to this is when they more started experimenting with like just like different sounds and
Yeah,
melodies, and you know, had like some clean parts here and there, which I noticed you guys had a couple of those too. So
I think
it makes
I think
sense.
their last record's their best record personally. Like I when I was younger, I mean, like I never hated Bane, but they kind of, to me, like for a while felt like they were the hardcore band that like metalcore kids liked, you know? And then I knew they felt like the band that like scene kids that wanted to seem cool wore the zip up Bane hoodie, you know? I'm really dating myself with these like reference points. But like I had Bane records, and like I kind of got them because I was like, oh, well, like I'm supposed to like this because I like all these other bands that sound like Bane. But it just never really stuck with me per se. But then when the last record they put out came out, that's the one that clicked. And then when I went back, I'm like, I liked all the older records. Like I just like heard it differently at that point, and I'm like, okay, this is actually really sick. Like, um, they rock. Like um, Charlie and I's old band got to play with Bane. That show was really cool. Like on their last like Northwest, the last tour that lasts like 2 years or whatever. But um, got to play with them when they were up here. But yeah, I mean, like Suicide File for me is like a big band for me. Like personally, I really like them. I think that, um, I think that's interesting too, like, because for us, like, it's kind of weird. Like the Northwest is such like a pocket, and I don't like so I'll say our number one biggest influence is Go It Alone, like big time. And to us, especially like more so, I think more so to me, just because I'm a couple years older than Charlie. But that band was like so pivotal to me, and like they felt to me like the biggest band. But I kind of think like they were very much like I know they were like they toured and stuff, and I think that they were popular, but like they were very much like a regional thing. I think in comparison to like some of the other bands from that era. And then like that's like one of my favorite things is like when people will like, oh, your band reminds me of this or this. And I feel like sometimes it's very much like some of the stuff like I hear that, and some of the times it's like I wouldn't hear that on like thinking it, but I'm like I can hear how like this person might have gotten to that point, but I'm like that's crazy, like that's cool, like that's what that's like I guess like your reference point, um like on the new record there's a lot of parts that were like influenced by Propagandhi. And I mean I like them, I'm not like a big Propagandhi head, but like Charlie and Ralph and Nathan are obsessed with them, and they're like, oh, this sounds like a Propagandhi part, and I'm like, I don't know what that means, but that's cool, like I like this part, it sounds sick. But yeah, I don't know, just like especially like from when we started the band to now, I don't really think that that's like the influences that we're pulling from. I don't think a lot, like there are bands that are currently doing it, but I don't think by and large there's that many, especially when we started the band, I don't think there was like barely anyone that was doing that. To where I feel like it really felt like before COVID, like more melodic, faster hardcore was like about to be it felt like we were talking, like it felt like it was going to be like one of the next big waves that was like gonna happen. We're like, all right, really heavy hardcore like had its thing, like metalcore, the metalcore revival kind of feel like that already feels like it's like past. This feels like it's the next logical thing that's gonna happen. Half Heart got back together, you got all sorts of people that were like reinvigorated with that stuff. And then COVID happened, and then death metal came out of that and like whatnot. But because I remember at the time we're like, all right, well fuck yeah, like we've been on this tip way before a lot of other current bands where like this is gonna be awesome. Like we have no aspirations of like getting big, but we're like it'll just be cool. Like when people are looking at current bands, like we'll be one of the like bands that has been doing this for a second,
Yeah, that death metal thing was crazy. Cause like I said, I'm from Rochester, and Undeath had pretty much just started around that time, and now it's like you can't look at like a top 10 list or a fucking like anybody's photography from the last 6 months. Like they've been everywhere. I'm personally not a huge fan of like anything with like those kind of vocals or whatever. Those dudes are cool and like they're good musicians or whatever, but it's just not really my style. But
yeah, I don't give a shit about most death metal to be like I went to like a big death metal show over the summer, and like the vibe was cool. Like it was, there's people there I hadn't seen in years. I was kind of like, the fuck made you come to this show? Like you stopped going to hardcore shows a long fucking time ago. Like that's crazy. Like and these are all like new current bands. Like I just wanted to go up and ask like, why are you here? How did you hear about this? Like what made you want to come back? But yeah, it's kind of interesting how that kind of really like it makes, at least to me, it makes sense from the whole like, oh, you have a lot of younger people that were probably into like deathcore and stuff like that, like this, at least on like paper or whatever, like this seems cooler than any of like all that deathcore shit was like mad corny. But it's just kind of interesting because even like I still love a lot of like metalcore and shit like that. I always hated when those bands did like low vocal, like when they was like when they would do like the flat out like metal vocals. I'm like, this is so goofy. Like just yell and like just sound mean, like, and angry. Like, you don't need to sound like a metal dude or a metal singer, you know?
Yeah, I love the first few Hatebreed records and pretty much every Terror record, but that's about as close to the low vocals as I can really get. Like even like what people refer to as like beatdown and crap like that, I'm like, I like watching people go off, but the music is it's just not really my thing. But I do kind of wonder, it seems like rapcore is like a real thing in hardcore now. Like, is that gonna pop off now? There's at least a few bands like legitimately mixing rap with hardcore now. Like, it's crazy. I'd never seen that before, really, except for like
It's
maybe
wild.
Cold. You know?
Um, Charlie and I are, we'll say, huge new metal head. Like, I love new metal. That was my first like big like that was the first subgenre that I really like dove into. And so him and I like jerk off pretty hard about a lot of that stuff, but a lot of that stuff for me is like pure nostalgia, you know? Like I don't care. Like he keeps up with current, like he's like, yo, you heard this band? I'm like, no, I haven't. And he'll send it to me. I'm like, this does nothing for me at this point in my life. Like it's not bad. I'm like, I don't like this is not what I'm looking for at this point. But I do think that it's like him, like, you know, like Gridiron, you know, like that, like
That's what I was gonna say, because I
they-
personally, no offense too, but I've never listened to new metal. Like, I'm not here to judge anybody who does or doesn't. We've talked about this on the podcast before, and like bands being influenced in hardcore by new metal now and whatnot. That's fine too.
yeah,
But I just want to make sure that you knew that I was more referring to like yeah, like
yeah.
Gridiron, and
Well, no,
there's
like,
a
because
couple
I
other bands
remember
coming up like that now too.
we're when that record came out, he like I made heard the old stuff. He sent to me. He's like, "Yo, man, this is straight up. This is like rap metal. It's awesome. Like, He's like, just give this a listen." I listened to it. I'm like, this isn't really my thing, but I'm like, this is very, very well done for what this is. And like, I fully understand if someone likes this. I wouldn't make fun of someone for liking this. Like, this may like, and then like when we played with him in Tulsa, I'm like, this is a very well oiled like, and I didn't even know. So I mean, I know now, but that band Rock Bottom or whatever, the singer of Gridiron sang on I think the second Rock Bottom EP, and that was the Rock Bottom EP that I loved, and it had a lot of rap swagger to the vocals, and so like once I read that, I'm like, oh, this is all lining up and like makes sense. But yeah, I think that again, I think that I said it before, but like I think more now than ever, I think you're gonna see people because again, hardcore is fucking cool. All right. I think you're gonna see the wiggle room of what you can define as hardcore even more. I'm not even mad about that. Like I don't fucking care at this point. As long as like you have I mean it's always been to an extent, it's always been like, oh, the ethos over like sound, I think. But I think now even more you're going to see the sonic delineation of what is hardcore get way looser. And I think that you're gonna like there's nothing cool about like being a new metal band now. You know what I mean? Like you're not seeing any new bands come out that are new metal that pop. Like no one cares. Like but if you could play rap metal or new metal or whatever, but you're a bunch of people from the hardcore scene, there's nothing embarrassing about liking that. You know what I mean? I think that that's going to happen more. Like I I don't know. Like that's like one thing I love about our band. It's like it's very much like we are a hardcore band. We sound like a I've seen I've seen a lot of people reference the new record as like, oh, this is like no frills hardcore. Which to me I'm like, that's wild because I feel like we're pulling in a lot of stuff that like to me feels very frilly in a lot of ways. But at the same time, I'm like, I totally get that I get that compare or description. And I think that at least for me, and like I'm not gonna speak. I think most people in the band would agree, but like we really like that. We're just sound like a hardcore band. Like it's not you. It's very much like on the nose of what it's going for. It's not. We're not trying to like mix in all these like we'll say third party influences where it becomes so far removed from what it actually even is. Like I love like I think experimentation and like music is really cool, and I think that without that you wouldn't have I love Youth Crew, but I'll talk shit on Youth Crew all day long because it's one of the most like derivative forms of hardcore, and it doesn't like I was listening to Youth today the other day and I was like, God, this is so fucking sick. But I also don't want to listen to any bands that just sound like this. Like in 2022, like I just don't care. Like take that sound and like piggyback off of it and do something a little different, and that'll be cool. And I think that I think with the current space of hardcore, I think that it feels like you're going to be seeing more of that, and I'm very much into that aspect of where the sound of the scene is going. But to circle back, I think you're going to see way more new metal personally. But
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I think you already kind of have been. Again, I don't personally care. It's not really my cup of tea. I don't really name the bands ever, but I know there's at least a few. But I guess again, like, do you like when you hear hardcore bands that are influenced by new metal, as somebody who like listened to new metal before, like, do you like that kind of stuff, or are you more just like I'd rather just hear a hardcore band?
yeah, I mean, I mostly will go, this is not for me. But at the same time, I'm like, I think with like anyone that's like been around for a while, I think like because I used to be the biggest fucking hater. I mean, I'm definitely still a hater on most things. But it's like I keep that shit to like the group chat to amongst friends. Like I'm not putting that out publicly because that's just like it's not a good vibe. It's not a good energy. Like if this band or this thing isn't for me, that's fine. It could be for this person or that person. Like if they get something enjoyment out of it, awesome. You know what I mean? And I think that yeah, it's just like I'm honestly at this point, like so one of our other guitar player, Hunter, he's like I don't know his exact I think he's like 26. I feel like I should know his age, but like I just know he's like definitely like younger, like way younger than like the rest of us in the band. And him and I'll talk about music a lot. So I'm always like, you ever heard this band? And he's like, no, that was before my time. And they're not like I love when like you'll have bands where when they were in their heyday, they felt like they were huge. But then like, the sands of time, it's like they really weren't that like relevant or they didn't have like a lasting impact on hardcore. But so I'll always be showing him bands and then he'll show me like newer bands and stuff. Or like we'll be just discussing newer bands where it's like he'll love it and I'm like, this isn't for me, but I get why you like that. Like this band reminds you of this and this and this band, and I loved them when I was like 20. Or you know what I mean? To where I'm like, I'm not this band's intended, like this newer band, I'm not their intended audience. So like I'm not gonna hate on it. It's just like it's not for me. Like I get way more excited, I feel like at this point about like the more like adjacent stuff as opposed to like straight up hardcore. And even like when we played that fest in Tulsa, Act Like You Know, that like so the lineup was so diverse in terms like there was something there for literally every type of micro scene subgenre within all under the guise of like hardcore. And it kind of like watching it was kind of interesting like seeing people seeing someone in a lock and out shirt spin kicking to a slam metal band or whatever. I'm like, that's bizarro as hell to me. But at the same time, I'm like, well, when I was younger, I loved fucking like Ed Gein, and then I loved Chain of Strength, and then I loved fucking some goofy MySpace metal band that I thought was funny, and they just had like breakdowns, and then I loved like A Day to Remember or whatever, to where I'm like, okay, it actually makes sense that these younger kids at this show are going off to all these different bands that all sound like very different and are from, it's like, are definitely not the same whatsoever. And then so I'm like, that's cool actually. Like that makes sense, you know. Like when I was younger, I was in everything. These younger kids, they're into everything. So where I kind of just think that's like a normal thing, you know? I think that because even then I was getting dunked on by like my older friends of being like, yeah, this shit sucks, man. Like, here, go listen to these bands. Like this other stuff you're listening to is garbage. Like, you know what I mean? And to where I don't know, I think that I kind of got derailed, but yeah, I just think that, you know, shit's interesting right now, I guess. I think that
Shout out to Ed Gein though. Syracuse represent. I booked those guys a ton of times back in the
Ed
day.
Gein,
And shout out to Hex Records, Ryan Hex, old friend. Yeah, that's cool. You're coming up on those guys.
I saw them play here before I moved. The summer I visited, they played. Band was definitely way better live, I thought. And then I showed one of my friends them recently, like a younger friend, and I'm like, you ever fucked with this band Ed Gein? And he was like, I've heard the name, but I've never actually listened to them. I'm like, well, you're a hater. You like to ruffle people's feathers, so I think you'll like their lyrics. And then I sent him the first record, and I'm like, this is, in my opinion, the better one out of all the records. And then like he was like reading through, he's like, this is fucking crazy. Like that they're like, these are very like fuck you lyrics. I'm like, yeah, it's cool. And then he like listened to him, like he's like, this is actually really sick. Thanks. Like I had never actually checked these guys out before, to where um yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of I mean everything within hardcore I feel like is just like an homage to like the generation. You know, someone, you're either pulling like barely anything's actually like unique or like new, you know? So I think that everything just like recycles itself. And I think that if there's a band like a current band or current bands that aren't your thing, that's okay, because there'll probably be someone else's thing. And there's always gonna be a band for whatever style you like. You just have to dig for it. It might not be what's cool at the moment, you know?
So I guess circling back to the record, I know we keep getting off on these tangents about slam metal and the 55 different subgenres that can be considered hardcore at any given time. So again, I know you guys got slowed up with the pandemic and whatnot. Were you guys already like working on the record like before all that, or?
Yeah, so we had written almost half the record before the world shit the bed. We the initial plan was do an East Coast tour. We're gonna end the tour, I think, in Chicago. We're gonna drive out to Chicago. Like I think we're gonna start the Northeast and like work our way, and then end the tour in Chicago, and then we were gonna record the record in Chicago, and then come home, and then I would do vocals here. That didn't happen. And then so once we realized that, well, this is gonna be like the new normal for like indefinitely, you know what I mean? Like, okay, well, let's finish, like, let's just take our time to write. So then, kind of like what a lot of other bands I'm sure did, we would have an idea, we would post it in the group chat, someone would take it and like add to it. But we were fortunate enough, most of us at the time just started like, you know, we were able to work fully remote. And I feel like especially at the beginning we were very COVID, what's the word, right way for like phrasing, we're very risk averse, of like we didn't like, living in like the state of Idaho where COVID was more like a, yeah, it's a thing. Like, yeah, there's COVID. There's COVID, and that was it. Like, I remember when I had friends that came that traveled through at different points during the pandemic that were like, yo, it feels like no one in Idaho even gives a fuck about COVID. And I'm like, it's not really a thing. I mean, our cases are very high here per capita, but you know, they don't give a fuck. But um we just did a lot of writing remotely to where, because like so many of us were working at home, like we felt like when like we weren't like constantly getting in a room together, but it was kind of like, all right, well, one like we feel comfortable enough, like we'll none of us are like out fucking around doing a bunch of other stuff. Like we're just chilling at home. So when we do get in a room together, we're gonna like be as efficient as possible. Like we'd get together and we'd write like 2 or 3 songs. Like we had like like the bulk of the ideas were done before we even got together. So it was more like, okay, we're gonna get in a room now and we're actually just gonna like piece the song fully together and like, maybe write like the little like transitions and stuff, clean those up. But like we wrote basically half the record remotely, and then we had the first half done um before everything. And like, I don't know, it's weird. Like because so Hunter, we wrote the 7-inch, we were a 4-piece. Hunter joined our band on second guitar because we always wanted a second guitar player, just because it obviously always just sounds better. But Nathan couldn't do a tour that we were gonna do, so we had Hunter like, oh, do you want to fill in? Like, he can't do it. Yeah, sure. And then we ended up getting like, we all knew him, but we never like really hung out with him. And we all got along with him really well. I'm like, oh, you just want to be in the band? Like, we've wanted a second guitar player. Like, this just seems like a natural like fit. And he was like, yeah, I'm down. And Hunter's in like, fuck, I think he's in like 4 bands right now, 3. He's in a bunch. But yeah, so got the record done. We ended up that summer demo tracking the whole thing ourselves. Like, Charlie is a fucking musical whiz. Like, at the practice space we were using at the time, he had built a studio in there, and like that's where we tracked the 7-inch and stuff. But so we ended up tracking the entire album, like demo tracked it. That was very hard for me personally because I had never sang on a single one of the songs by the time we tracked it. So that was very much a trial by fire situation.
So did you have lyrics written already for all the songs though, or were you writing them like as they were, like, you know what I mean?
We so that was the nice thing with, we weren't on like a time constraint, with the record. So we really had time to sit with the lyrics. I think this was the longest I spent writing lyrics, to where we started tracking the record in August. And I want to say, like, I had rough ideas for like some of the songs that we had already written, but once we were finally like, all right, we're writing the record, like this is what we're doing now, since we're not playing shows or anything. I had I'd have like cell phone recordings of some songs, but I don't remember how many I had done, but I had like probably 2/3 done. And then once they demo tracked all of the instruments, then I sat there, with the songs and then finished writing them. But then what I would do, and this was really helpful, is I'd go over to Charlie's house and we would listen to the demo tracks and we'd workshop all the lyrics at that point again, to where we spent a lot of, not, I mean, we did, I gotta say, we spent a lot more time than we ever had on lyrics. And like, we wanted the record, because like, oh, the record's gonna have a cohesive theme. We want the songs to be about like, these are kind of like the key points of what the record's about. So we want all the songs to reflect that. Like, we don't really want to deviate from that in any way. And so as we're going through, like, we were being very intentional with like the lyrics. And like, I remember him and I sitting at his kitchen table, like just like reading through them over again, like just like sitting there, like just like spitballing stuff for an hour to come up with like one line. Like, oh, we really like this line of the song now. Like, because we wanted everything to rhyme as well. Because we're like, oh, it's gonna be. We want it to be catchy. We want it to like be stuff that you get stuck in your head. We want it to all be very intentional to where we all like lyrics that rhyme. Like I feel like those are the ones that kind of just get stuck in your head a little more. And we want it to be not rhyming for the sake of rhyming as well, because that shit sucks. To where going through and just taking a lot of time on the lyrics. So when it came to recording it, it was just like when we did the 7-inch and just in any other bands I've done, anything that we recorded, we had played as a band a bunch of times already. So I just knew the songs, whereas this was very much a part by part, figuring it out as I was going. Like I had the lyrics done at that point, but like humming it in your head, versus like doing it is two like way different things. But we did that. We were done, I think, tracking the or the LP like for ourselves at some point in September, I think. Like mid-September, I feel like was when we were done. But
Wait, you recorded this LP this year or last year then?
We demo tracked it fall 2020. We tracked it 2021.
Okay.
It's been written for a while.
Yeah. I know sitting on music's a common theme. I interviewed some of the dudes from Bent Blue over the summer, and I was surprised, and I guess kind of not surprised too that it had been a year for them too, because I know there's with the vinyl even too,
Yeah.
you're waiting for a while for that too. But jumping back to the lyrics, I know you said you purposely made like certain themes, and I can kind of tell what they are from listening to it a few times. But for people who haven't listened to it yet, kind of just give everybody kind of an idea what the album's about.
So the record is, I guess in a nutshell, it's about like America. Being that, so being that we live in Idaho, Boise is, Boise is very like liberal, which, is fine, but also like most liberals, I shouldn't say most, but there's a lot of really annoying liberals, So it's like, but everywhere else is like very Republican and conservative, And I mean, I think that's like a symptom of like America. It's not like isolated. Like even like you can go to the most fucking like blue state and there's hella fucking problems, and like it's not, But so we had like lyrically speaking, so we had half the songs written before, but I think like, and I mean this is more so like internal stuff, but like I can look at the songs that we wrote during like the pandemic and specifically tell like, okay, this was definitely going through my head, and I was like very mad about these things. But some of like the key themes for the record is like fear and greed and like capitalism and like racism, just like all like trying to like in my we had this Word doc that I like fucking wrote on and like dicked around with for like a year. It's like in my head I'm like, it's all like coming like all these bullet points we had. But yeah, I mean the record's called Can We Wait. It's like the whole, it's supposed to be like sarcastic, like can we wait? Like no, like obviously not. But yeah, I mean the songs just kind of wrote about like how we were feeling, what I think especially like during like COVID and like lockdown and all that shit. I think you saw a lot of people's, I guess, like true colors come out, and like there's like the little George Floyd thing, and like just really seeing like where people's actual like personalities lie and like where they're like, I guess, like moral compass is aimed at. And so we were very, very angry. I mean, we still are, but like I think especially at that time, just because like everyone's lives, a lot of people's lives are so slowed down. You had actually had time to think about stuff, and you weren't being like overworked and like so busy with like the day to day. You actually had time to like sit there and think about things. And I remember like as a band, like we were getting very pissed off and frustrated about stuff, and like, um, just writing about that. I think that at least for our band, like I kind of like alluded to it earlier, but we've always wanted to write songs that were about things outside of hardcore. And like at least for us when we were writing this record, I think Charlie was talking about when we were in the studio, like he's like, oh, when I was younger, because Charlie's from a very, very small town in Idaho. Like, I don't know the exact population. I'll look it up right now as I'm talking, but it's a very, very small town population. Where he's from has a population in 2021, the population was 908 people. And he was talking when we were recording, it was like, oh, like Strike Anywhere really put me onto a lot of like ideas and like ways of thinking that like, and even just general like hardcore and like punk got him into stuff that like he might not have discovered otherwise, And then so for us, we're like, we really want our band to kind of be the same thing where it's like, I don't think that anything we're writing about is anything new. And that's obviously that's part of a bigger problem. Like the fact that you're still having to like talk about these things. But at the same time, like, oh, especially now more than ever, like hardcore being such a more younger person scene again. Hey, if, a younger person can like, if this can put them onto these ideas and like put them toward like on this sort of path, that's fucking awesome, because these like ideas and these like this way of thinking should extend outside of the walls of hardcore, and that's ultimately where you would want it to go. And then at the same time, I don't think that older people, when I say older people, that could be like someone who's 25, like I think that people are always still learning, and like I don't know, like I've referenced before, all the way that I am, like I'm very much like a repetitious person. Like I can hear something over and over again, but sometimes hearing it a scotch this way that's a tiny, tiny bit different will make it click, And that was another thing with us, was we're like, what we're saying isn't necessarily like reinventing the wheel, but it's like, this is like our way of saying it, and this is how we're feeling about it. And maybe someone will hear that and maybe they've heard this type of sentiment before, but it didn't really click. But hearing it this way like resonates with them a different way, it clicks for them, and that makes them start thinking about this differently. Or maybe it makes them want to like look into like these things, or read this book, or go fucking watch this document or whatever, what I mean? I think everything is a potential jumping off point. And I think that it's kind of the same thing. I mean, it's not the same thing, but also the same thing like when bands are like, it shouldn't matter if you're playing to 5 people or 500 people. Like you should treat every show like it's important and that it matters, because it does. So I think with like our record, that's kind of the same thing. Our same viewpoint is just like these are things that these are issues that we feel are important, that need to be discussed. And I think hardcore punk is I think it's a very cool platform to bring like awareness and attention to things that you feel are important.
No, I agree. And it's weird because we did our year-end wrap-up episode. It's probably gonna be like 4 or 5 episodes back by now when this airs, but that's pretty much how I ended the episode, was talking about how that's what's kept me interested in hardcore and punk for so many years, is that it's about making a change and inspiring change in other people. And it's kind of interesting because kind of circling back to what you said, and I'll try not to ramble for too long, because I kind of want to start wrapping up soon, but you were talking about like the political landscape, so to speak, sort of. and it kind of makes me think back to when I was living in Colorado. I read this is during my first encounter with drug years, so I was influenced by Hunter S. Thompson during those years. So I was reading he wrote a book called Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail, and he was talking about, and this is like 72, he's talking about like being in like the presidential debates and comparing it to like sports, and like how they're just as enthusiastic as sports fans are, and they're as rabid as a sports fan. And at the time I was like, that's just crazy to picture. But now, like in 2022, like everything's political and you have to be on a side. And like I'm wearing a basketball sweatshirt, so like I love sports and I can relate to it. And I know like when you get debating about like sports and stuff, that's the most heated I've ever debated with somebody until recently. Now where it's like,
No, real quick, I gotta get you linked up with our bass player. Ralph has a basketball podcast. He's obsessed with basketball. Like,
I would love to check it out.
that's his favorite thing in the world is basketball. But go on, sorry.
But no, you just made me think about all that, because like you guys actually singing about something. This is where I'm going with this, is like 20 years ago, yeah, everybody probably would have been singing about that. But now with hardcore, not a lot of bands sing about things. And then, we learned in the last few years with everybody having their own opinion and everybody being on social media now, circling back again to you talking about like old bands. Again, I'm not talking shit, so I'm not going to name names, but we all know who I'm talking about. A lot of old people that I once loved their bands and looked up to them, I definitely don't listen to their bands anymore, because the shit that they say and believe, like, I can't get anywhere close to any of that kind of shit. You know what I mean? And it's just crazy to like the age we live in. And I know a lot of people are just trying to troll people and they say shit like that, but I'm just like, I mean, when this airs, it's gonna be 2023. I got a son and a daughter, and like when people start talking about like transgender sports and being mad about this and that, I'm like, they don't even have kids. Like, why do they care? You know what I mean? It's like, it boggles my mind why like people in hardcore want to use their platform to talk about shit like that. I'm like, yo, you look so stupid right now. You know what I mean? Like, it's insane.
Well, I was talking with someone. I don't know. This was a while. I mean, it feels like very recently, but it was probably like a year ago, I feel like. But we were talking about how it feels like there's way less, like air quotes, political hardcore bands. Whereas, 15, 20, 30 years ago, it felt like that was not the norm, but like more often than not, like there was a lot of bands talking about shit, and we were like, it's kind of interesting that doesn't really feel like that's like the norm anymore, or even like that often. And they had a good point. They're like, yeah, but it feels like everyone is everything, like, like the 24-hour news cycles. It's he's like, back then people didn't have cell phones like that. They didn't have all these different devices where they're getting berated with like the constant news cycle and people, and there wasn't social media like there is now, to where it wasn't invading every aspect of their life. And music is escapism for a lot of people, to where, maybe like that's the one place where they don't want to have to deal with that, because it's in every other aspect of their life all the time. And I was like, yeah, that's definitely fair. And like that honestly makes a lot of sense. Like, that's like, I've had some friends that like get mad about like, oh, these bands don't have anything to say, and like I don't fuck with that, blah blah. And I'm just like, hey, like, if that's how you feel, that's fine, man. But I'm like, look, I like that there's something for everybody right now. I think that's cool. Like, there are bands that are political, not as many, but also there's bands that you can just have fun. And like, I'm like, there've always been bands that you can just have fun. And like, being that I do think the world feels, and again, like you're referencing like that novel from like the 70s, like it's nothing new, but it just feels so much more fucking polarizing now than it ever has. To where if someone, and like, I'm a fucking white dude, like my life's gonna be 10,000 times easier than a lot of other people's. To where it's like, if your life every day is like having to deal with like various amounts of bullshit, because of like the color of your skin or like your gender or whatever, maybe like when you're going to hardcore, like you just want to like fucking like let loose and fucking spin kick someone and like have fun with your friends and like fuck around. Like that makes a lot of fucking sense. It's the same thing. Like I'm obsessed with, like, I'm a big fucking like movie person, and I like my girlfriend loves like all the true crime shit and like a lot of that stuff, and I'm like, I just like watching movies. Like there's escape. Like I just want to watch the craziest shit that's like feels so far like not realistic at all, and like I just want to like not have to think about it and just like have fun. And I think that with hardcore, I think that for a lot of people, I think that's probably what it is right now. But at the same time, I do think that a lot of the things that like you're saying, what I'm saying is I do think that that is something, at least to me, that's like something that really differentiates hardcore from other types of music. I would say punk also does it, but it's at the same time, like I don't know, I think there's a lot of aspects about punk that are super fucking corny and goofy, whereas like hardcore feels a little more like the more legitimized version of that. Like, because you mentioned earlier, like you're vegan. I mean, could be wrong, but I truly think that like if it wasn't for hardcore, I think that like you wouldn't have veganism as mainstream as it is now. Like I really don't think that, I'm not, and I'm not like I'm not vegan. Like I eat a lot of vegan food, but like I'm not vegan or anything. But like, fuck, I'm trying to like have we got two vegans in the band, two dudes that basically like are in between vegetarian and vegan. Like when we like basically when we do band stuff, it's like we're just we try everywhere we're going, like we're just going to a place that have like vegan food, But like Charlie, our drummer, fucking loves Earth Crisis, and like I always think about like they had to have had, at least to me, like a big impact on like the more like mainstream aspect of veganism. Like
Dude, I heard Carl was on Jamie Joss's podcast like 3 or 4 years ago, and I highly doubt
I
he'll
know
listen to this.
I know exactly what episode you're
Yeah,
talking
so I'm sorry if you, I doubt, Carl, you're listening to this, but if you are, I'm sorry to repeat this. But Jamie basically was like, how come you guys never like invested in some sort of like almond milk thing, or you know what I mean? Like they could have been, and it's like, but yeah, they are like, dude, I've had so many people, especially coming from this region. Like we've never had anybody from Earth Crisis on the podcast. We've done a shitload of Syracuse interviews in the last year, but I've had so many people say how influential they are to them, and they've gone, and people that I know, like that I'm friends with, have gone up to Carl in person and just thanked him for being such an influential. Like I'm not a huge Earth Crisis fan, but I know that like if it wasn't for them and like other bands, like I had my first vegan meal in Syracuse in 1997 at a hardcore festival, you know what I mean, which turned into Hellfest a couple years later or
about. Like
whatever.
growing up, like the only people that I knew that were vegan were people from hardcore. Like I, not to mention, like this is the food that they were like putting me onto was actually good, versus when you think of like hippy dippy vegans where I'm like, no one wants to eat that. Like that, no, like no one's eating that. Like that doesn't taste good. Versus um like that. Do you ever listen to that band Die Young from Texas?
Yeah, yeah.
Like that was like that was like one of the big bands for me, which is kind of like, it's interesting now because they're super political, but when I got into them, like a lot of, again, talking about like different points in your life where things will click. I'll go back now and I'm like, man, these lyrics are fucking sick. Like this is like I'm like connecting to it on like a way more now than I was then. But they were like a big like gateway band for me. And Daniel, their singer, is like hella fucking vegan. And he was like, because I booked them in Alaska and they like made us some vegan food like one night. And like that was probably one of the first like vegan meals that I'd had ever. I was like, this is fucking good.
That's the dude that's super into fitness too, right? Their
Yeah.
singer, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess kind of circling back to finish talking about the album, it kind of touches on what we've been saying too. I think with like not as many bands being political. Like I said, I'm from the 80s, and everybody in our generation, I feel like, was diagnosed with ADD, and we were all given not Adderall, but what was the thing? Whatever the thing before it was, I forget what it was now. But what I'm getting at is I feel like everybody in this generation must have something way fucking stronger than ADD, because like the age we live in, like nobody really releases full lengths anymore. And when they do, like you guys seem to have broken the fucking mold, because like I did like a top 10 list and I was going through all the albums of last year, and you guys have like the longest album of the year, dude. Like everybody else is like 15 or 16, 17 minutes for an LP. I'm like, how come like nobody, and then I realized like nobody can write long LPs anymore. Like yours is over 20 minutes, right? Like it's like 21 or 22, right? I want to say.
Let me look. I know it's
I'm pretty sure it is. It's longer than 17 though, dude. Like nobody, like I think everyone's just catering to the fact that we have short attention spans now, and no one like there's no more 30-minute
20 minutes and
LPs.
25 seconds.
That's over 20 minutes at least. Like it's not like every album last year was 17 minutes. I swear. I was like, this is so crazy. Everything.
I think I was talking with someone about this the other day. I think that streaming really fucked up. Not even fucked up. It just it's shifted how people digest music, you know? Especially with them really pushing like playlists, you know, like I fucking hate that if your band doesn't get on a big playlist, that can really make or break people actually like hearing your record, like new people, you know what I mean? Like if it's people that already know about your band, they're gonna listen to either way. But you know, you can be no name band, you get on the right playlist, your band will blow up from that, or at least that's gonna be like a big stepping stone for your band. But I think that with streaming, I think that more often than not, like obviously some people still do it, but more often than not, I don't think that people are listening to like front to back album. They're like putting stuff on playlists to where I don't like during lockdown, I revisited a lot of, we'll just say like post-hardcore records and things like that I checked out when I was like stuff that I was told I'm supposed to like, you know, when I was younger, like, oh, you're into hardcore, you should be listening to these records and blah blah. That didn't click for me, but I'm like, I'm gonna give this another shot, and like a lot of it clicked for me at this point, and some of it didn't. But one thing I definitely noticed was from more of the, we'll just say the CD era, you know, and like CD era and before, you could have a lot of albums where you could trim the fat, and there's probably anywhere from 3 to like 6 good, like strong songs on the album. And then there's a bunch of filler songs where it's like, you know, they're never going to play these live. These are there to so it's an album, you know, and like you could only have a couple good songs and that would be enough for you to sell, like people would buy it. And I think with streaming, I think that puts way more pressure on bands to not put out as much fluff, because I was talking to someone in Tulsa about this specific thing of like kind of like the risks versus reward of putting out LPs versus like EPs and like the Spotify age, where it's like, all right, let's say you put out an EP, okay? It's 3 songs. Maybe only one of those songs goes over and people don't like the other 2. You kind of look like an idiot as a band. But let's say, I feel like I'm missing part of the context. Oh, we were talking about like bands experimenting and how, and it's the initial conversation. Oh, you put out an LP, there's room for experimentation and trying new things. And being that there's so many songs, you have the opportunity to do that. And if people don't connect with the, like, we'll say the weirder stuff, you know, on your album, it's okay, because they're going to pull the songs they really like off the album, put them on a playlist anyway. And then at the same time, if you have enough good songs still that people like, people will forget about the songs that didn't like go over as well. But if you're putting out an EP and you still try to do those weird things and people don't connect with it, I was saying, then you have one song that goes over and you have two or three that people are kind of, I don't really fuck with this. Then that release doesn't look as good. To where I think that there's more eyes and ears on what you're putting out. I think that bands are putting out shorter releases. I think that with the way, like, I'll be frank, I don't ever want to put out another LP just because of how, like, I love playlists. That's usually how I listen to music at this point. But I even did that before. I loved like mixtapes when I was younger. And I loved making mix CDs. Like, talking about ADD, I don't think I have ADD, but my brain loves like the variety of like, but I also love all of my favorite hardcore records that made the biggest impact on me or ones that I listened to front to back.
That's what I was gonna say, because I'm trying to think while you're saying all that. Like I can think of tons of stuff from like 99, 2000 for hardcore bands where I'm like, okay, there's like 6 good songs out of the 12 on that. But like anything classic, like it's front to back. And then, but I think again, like I said before, I grew up on rap music, so I can definitely think of a ton of rap LPs where they were definitely filling the length specifications or whatever. And now with rap, like they're definitely doing the exact mold that you're talking about, because like, I mean, I don't listen to a ton of like mainstream. I mean, some of the like the dudes from around here are like mainstream now, like the Buffalo dudes, but they all do like just like singles now, it seems like EPs and like mixtapes and shit.
I
They'll
forget.
do like one.
There was some podcast, it might have been Axe Grinder, it might have been just an interview with someone, but someone was saying kind of how like music in general at this point is taking like the rap model of like how it always used to be like singles and like mixtapes and things like that, and kind of like everyone has kind of pivoted to that model because of, it's crazy how fast music moves at this point in general. And like looking at like your a little while ago talking about like year-end lists and stuff, and I made like a playlist of the other day, like, oh, these are all my, I pulled like a song from each album, like these are all my favorite releases. And there's so much shit that came out this year that I forgot came out that like I liked. And it was just, there's just so much and it moves so fast. So we're like, if this band didn't tour a lot, or if this band kind of just put the album out and that was it, I like, especially with like, people getting their information from like social media and like how much the algorithms on that can kiss my ass, like they're crap. But it's just the whole thing, like my new thing now, and I keep telling other people to do this because I've noticed it more and more, is like just following a band on Spotify or whatever, whatever like your streaming service you chooses. But I've had that be way more helpful, like being kept in touch with when new music is coming out. Like it'll actually pop up, it'll show me, because the amount of people that have told us since the record came out, like that, like follow us on Instagram, it's like, oh hey, I had no idea that this even came out. Like that's crazy. And I'm like, oh thank you for checking out. That's cool. Like, but yeah, just like, I don't know. I think that there's so many bands now. Music moves so fucking fast that I think that the emphasis on quality control is much higher. And I know for us, like, we wanted to write like an album. So like with the way that the song order, the fact that we have like an intro on it, an interlude, we very much were putting it together as we want people to listen to this front to back, and we want it to flow well, where you're not feeling like the record's dragging. Like none of our songs are long. Like everything we've done with this record was very intentional because we want people to start to finish, but also not get bored. you know.
Well, before we start wrapping up with my couple last questions, I just want to say, circling back to the year-end lists, I do want to apologize because I feel like if we were to rewrite my top 10 like in 6 months, I would definitely put your album on there. But I have this thing where like if I'm doing an interview with somebody, and I heard this on a podcast recently too, where the dude asked him like what current stuff he listens to, and he was like, when I'm getting ready to do an interview with the band, that's all I listen to. And like when I started writing the top 10 list, it's like that's what I was listening to was your record because I was getting ready to do the interview. And I was like, man, I feel like I'd kind of be biased putting this on the top 10 now. And you guys, like, whenever a band releases stuff like right at the end of the year, I'm like, man, why are you guys putting this out like so late at the end of the year or whatever? Like, were you guys like, did that just how the cookie crumbled or whatever? Like it just came out at the end of the year? Were you planning on having it come out in like, you know what I mean, the last quarter or whatever?
So kind of yes to both of those. So we put the promo out over the summer, and we knew that we were putting the record out. Like we were basically like, vinyl or not, we're putting the record out this year. Like that's just like we're not waiting any longer for this. Like hopefully this gets figured out with the pressing plants, because like we're getting so many like conflicting like turnaround times. And we were just like, all right, the record's coming out this year either way, whether or not like when the vinyl comes out, it'll come out, but we're putting the record out. Like we're not waiting any longer on this. Like, it just doesn't make sense for us to wait any longer. It's already like been so long since we put anything out. And then we ended up trying the other way to like there was an opportunity for us to get the record out sooner. And so we were like, okay, fuck yeah. So then Charlie and I game planned kind of like a release schedule of how we wanted to put the record out. And so we did that, and having the record come out towards the end of the year, one thing, like, it wasn't like, oh, we're doing this on purpose, but like we were kind of like, what, this could potentially be something that happens, and that would be cool, is for like the record will have been out recent enough that when people are thinking of their year-end lists, it won't be something that was forgotten because it came out in February or March. You know what I mean? We're like, it'll be fresh on people's minds, so we're like, maybe it'll make some lists because of that. That'll be a cool bonus. But ultimately, we just want the record out this year, and it just kind of ended up being like, it can come out. Like this is when I actually got a email earlier. I think I'll be getting our vinyl tomorrow. It's delivered at my house tomorrow. So literally very, very end of the year. But yeah, so we were kind of like, I think at one point it might have been mentioned like we could have put the record out in January of next year, and we just said no, we're not doing that. I'm like, I think, going back to movies, January is a dumping ground time. I think that if your band is big enough, it doesn't matter. But like we're not a big band for it. We're not putting the record out in January. No one's gonna give a fuck about that record then. To where we kind of bumped with like the release schedule. We kind of bumped it around a little bit. Like usually, like I think most bands will wait like when they're dropping singles, they'll wait like a month between each single. But we did ours 2 weeks. But we're like, we're not a huge band, so it doesn't really matter. Like we can forego what like the kind of the typical model is for like most like bigger hardcore bands or whatever. Like we'll just do it this way. It's fine. But
also, before I forget, we're gonna be playing a song at the end of the episode, "Failed Animal." You told me that you think that's an interesting choice. Any reason why you think that's an interesting choice?
So to me, it's interesting because although it's on the LP, it's an old song. We put out, so my buddy Chris Mollett, like Youth Energy Design, he like does most of our art and shit. Like he did the album cover and the layout and everything for the record. He used to run a label called Dog Years Records, and he would put out comps every year, and he'd have like a bunch of different bands on it. And we actually had a different version. We have an older recording of the song that we initially recorded for our demo, but I didn't record vocals for it. And we kind of like, let's just save this for something else. And then he hit us up and was like, I'm going to put a comp out. Like, do you guys have any music? And I was like, I do actually. I got to go track vocals for it, but we have a song. And like, so then we recorded, like we put that out on a comp, and then something happened to where I think he had a band on the comp that was from Australia that was on a label, and it was a whole fucking thing to where the comp ended up getting taken off Spotify. And then I re-uploaded it during like lockdown just to have it up, because I was like, I'll get around to doing this, and I would just forget. But we re-recorded it for the LP and put it on the LP because we were like, the song rocks. We kind of feel like we wanted to have like a proper physical release of some kind, like to be on something. And we're like, thematically it fits with the record. Sonically fits with the new album. And we haven't played it in a really long time, but I would like to put it back into the set list. We were talking about like a lot of the songs on this new record we haven't played as like a full band because we were writing it during like, lockdown, to where we're gonna have to learn like a new set. Like we've been playing more or less, like we've played 2/3 of the songs on the new record live, I think, but this is one that Hunter's never played before. And I really like this, one of my favorite songs that we've written, to where I'm hoping we bring it back. But I think this is interesting because, like, at least for me, to this record, like that's a deep cut on the new record. I think it's cool that
there was like 2 other tracks that I was considering. One of them you already put out as a single, but honestly, out of the album, I feel like that's the one that sounds most like early 2000s, for better or worse. And like when I first started doing this podcast in the beginning, it was just me running it. And all the people I interviewed were like mainly from that era. So I feel like a lot of the people that are like our core listeners would appreciate something like that. Not to say they wouldn't appreciate the rest of it, obviously, but
the working title for this song before we had a name for it was Strike Anywhere Song. Well,
so what's really funny is, I don't know what episode it was. I'm sure you probably heard of the band, the Polar Bear Club, though. Mm-hmm. They're from Rochester. And when I had their singer on here like a year and a half ago, him and I were talking about bands that aren't from Rochester, but we consider them Rochester bands, because like when I or whoever was booking shows at the time would bring them here, they would just, like a wrestling term, they would have like a huge pop, like a mega pop, like everybody would just go nuts. And it seemed like it was like a homecoming show for them. And Strike Anywhere is one of those bands. And when I heard you talking about them on the other podcast, I was like, man, like all these influences that I already see from you guys and that you're talking about too. It's like, when you guys tour, well, I'll definitely get you guys here, because I feel like the people that like I'm still friends with and like came up in Rochester would love a band like this. You know what I mean? Because it's like that's the kind of shit that like was huge here like 20 years ago. You know what I mean? So I think
Polar Bear Club stayed at my old house a couple times, I think.
Good dudes.
They used to play here a lot. I feel like they always had. I mean, there was a minute where that band was huge.
Yeah.
I feel like they were supposed to play here. I think it was their Bridge 9 tour, Strike Anywhere, in them and like Ruiner and shit. And then I think Strike Anywhere, I don't think they dropped off the whole tour, but they definitely didn't play the Boise days. So then Polar Bear Club had to headline and play, like they ended up playing like a way longer set than they normally would. And so we're pulling out songs that they hadn't played in a while, and it was fun. No, but yeah, I mean, Strike Anywhere fucking rocks. I think that's a band that's fully lost on like younger people. Like that's a band. So when I was saying like, oh, the working title was Strike Anywhere, when we started the band, I didn't care about Strike Anywhere. Like, it was just a thing where I'm like, oh, like I've heard them. It's just not. It just hasn't clicked for me. Like when people put it on, I'm not mad at it. I don't dislike it, but it just doesn't click for me. And then that's a band that during lockdown I revisited and I got super into it. And like the lyrics are fucking awesome. Like to where now I'm like I guess like a big Strike Anywhere head. But like Nathan and Charlie and Ralph in particular were like, when we started the band, that was like a big influence on like a lot of stuff, was like Strike Anywhere. But yeah, I guess I'll circle to I'll jump to this point then. We're planning on coming to the East Coast next year. I don't know when yet, just because tours get booked out so far now. It's psychotic to me. I don't get that. I mean, I get it, but like, I don't know what I'm doing that far in advance. I'm not a full-time band. Like, the fuck, like, you know what I mean? But we had our band dinner a couple weeks ago to figure out like, well, what are we doing next year? Big plans are East Coast. That was like the main, like, that's the biggest place, or that's the biggest area we've wanted to tour since, like, we were planning on touring there before COVID, like, Europe. We're looking at Europe for next year, hopefully. And then the Midwest. Like, the thing that sucks is Boise is so fucking far from everything. Like, it really is. Like, we've toured the Northwest a bunch of times. It's fun. I'm sure we'll end up doing it next year, even though like we're kind of, we should like hold off on playing the Northwest as much. But just from like a purely like distance and cost, like we'll probably end up doing it again. But like, it's so expensive to fly out places if you're not doing a long enough tour to make the money back, and it's not like we can hop in a van and just drive. Like, everything's far, to where next year, that's like weird. Like, that was our big thing, is like, where can we tour where it's feasible, where we're not gonna like be completely fucked losing money. Like, the shows could all be great, but just the cost to get out there, we're gonna lose money either way. To where I think the big plan for next year is we're looking at flights, or like, I think what's gonna make the most sense for us a lot of times, we're gonna have to fly out to the East Coast. Like, we can't drive across the U.S. Like, that just, like, I think we're gonna drive either to Salt Lake or Seattle, play a show there, fly out, and then do our shows where we fly out to. But Boise is like a hub for like a hub airport. So drive to a hub, play a show that night. We'll make some money. You know what I mean? And then I don't know, Charlie, since he's in like Ingrown and their tour machines, since he's been touring with them a lot now, like, he's pretty, like, he was good at this stuff before, but he's like way better now at like ballparking, like routing, and like, well, we should fly out of here, like looking at tickets, like, and he just understands like way more about like routing now, and like, oh, this makes the most sense, like, I've played all these places, I have a general idea of like what the shows could be like and stuff. But
well, I'll be booking a bunch of shows, so if you guys make it up to Rochester, make sure to have your publicist or your manager or your booking agent or whoever.
It's me. That's
No,
all
I'm
me.
fucking with you. I'm going back to our earlier conversation, obviously.
I'll have my people.
Yeah. So yeah, you mentioned Ingrown, and I know you have other people in other, like literally like 6 other bands. So does that make it tough for you guys with like practicing and writing and planning shows and stuff, or?
Yes, we don't practice as a band. We we'll practice. We'll have a practice before tour, and then otherwise, I feel like we used to more so. I think the longer like, as the time goes on, as us being a band, we're more comfortable with like not even practice. Like, we'll play shows. Like, that's the practice, is playing the show. It's terrible for me as a singer. I should be practicing all the time, getting stamina and stuff, like, but yeah, we just don't really practice. We used to, but we just kind of, like, we'll practice once before tour, and then if it's like a big local show that we're like a bigger like show locally, we'll practice before. But other than that, like, we don't really practice, just because like everyone's in so many bands. Like, Hunter is in Witness Chamber, and they do a lot now. Ralph is like the manager at like a nonprofit bike shop and has a kid. Nathan is a college professor. Charlie is an ingrown who are fucking like, I feel like one of the biggest bands in hardcore right now. So we're all just as people really busy. So like even like when we were saying how our band didn't figure out like plans, like just figuring out the logistics of like what can we do next, like you know what I mean, like what's our wiggle room to like do stuff. And then
So I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say I think next year will be the first time that like we're probably gonna be like touring with like fill-ins at some point. Just legit like not even that like we want to, but it's just like this is probably going to end up being a thing that happens because like we don't want to not tour on the record, and we don't want to not take cool opportunities if like they're coming our way. Like we'll figure it out, we'll make it work like most bands do, you know? Like I think with hardcore, like I think hardcore is, at least in my experience, is like seems like the most common genre to have fill-ins.
Yeah, and that's what I was gonna say. Having a college professor and a dude who is Ingrown like a full-time band now, or pretty close to it, or
Pretty close. They have
yeah.
some stuff coming up that's not announced that's like fucking crazy.
Yeah,
But
it seems like you'd be limited with your touring availability, like you were saying that with the
yeah,
just
and I
those
mean
two
like
alone. Yeah.
I have no aspirations to tour full time. Like I did when I was younger, but like I'm 35. I'm trying to like marry like my girlfriend and I have been dating for like ever, and like we're trying to get married. You know, like we want to buy a house, like just do like more like grown up stuff. And to where at the same time for me with touring, like I am more down to like lose money on touring just because I'm looking at it as like a vacation. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, like, oh, I ended up losing, X number of dollars on like, it's like, yeah, but I had fun, and like the band was a means to do that tour. Like, I don't look at that as like a loss. I look at that as like an experience, and like that's cool. Like that's what I'm viewing it as. Like I have a job to where, you know, I'll pay like I have calculated that into doing this. I have like PTO and like blah blah blah. But kind of funny is like Nathan, college professor, like his job now, he's like, no man, I got this much time with PTO every year. I got a fucking TA I can have do stuff. Like I'm chilling. He's like, if we want to do shows, he's like, I'm pretty good. Like I have like, you know, I can tour. I can't do, a 3-week tour. And I'm like, you couldn't pay me to do that, even if it was a lot of money. But, um, we're like a week tour, cool. A 2-week tour, if it was like something crazy, all right. But, yeah, I mean, it's definitely a juggling act. I think that like it's a good problem to have, I think, in the sense that like all of our bands are doing things. So it's like something like I would I want all my friends to have as much cool opportunities and success as possible, to where we're like, we'll make it work, like we'll figure it out. Like it's just that, this will be the time where we finally have to maybe like actually use like fill-ins. But we've already got some of that stuff, I think, kind of figured out. So yeah.
All right, I think it's starting to get pretty late my time, and I think we're actually, I guess that means we're probably around the 2-hour mark, which I wasn't anticipating us to go this long with this interview. So apologies to my podcast partner Greg, who edits most of these, all of these actually. Apologies for us going so long. But I guess with that being said, is there anything we didn't touch on that you want to touch on, or anything else before, or like any shout outs or plugs, I guess too?
I mean, to shout out to Boise, I think that I don't know, I just like I think we touched on it right when we first started. Like people don't think of like hardcore when they think of Boise, and I think now, especially on the West Coast, Boise hardcore is like has a very positive like connotation to it. And when I think of like Northwest hardcore, like right now, Boise feels like one of the spots right now. And it's just fucking cool, and it's a testament to everyone involved. It's not like a one person or like it's a full-on communal effort from everyone. Obviously, there's some people that do more heavy lifting than others, but it's very much a communal thing, and I think that's fucking sick. I think that's what the coolest thing about hardcore is the ability to do that, or not the coolest, one of the coolest things. But shout out Boise, shout out Witness Chamber. Everyone that's listening should check out Witness Chamber. They're fucking sick. I feel like everyone has heard Ingrown, but if they haven't, check out Ingrown. I don't know, I feel weird. I used to be like shout out like a million bands, but now I don't like want to leave anyone out, It's like, oh, fucking blah blah. But just hardcore is in a very cool place right now. I mean, there's a lot of goofy nonsense, but at the same time, there's a lot of really cool things. So I think that if you're an old head, check out all the new bands. There's lots of cool shit. And if you're a young person, check out bands that aren't playing the really big music festivals, because that is such a small fraction of what is actually going on in hardcore. So, dig beyond that,
And last thing, I guess, on that other podcast in the intro, he had mentioned that he would hear the correct way of pronouncing Boise.
Yes.
I think I've been saying it Boise the whole time, and I just heard you say Boise.
It's
right?
Boise.
It's Boise.
Like it's pronounced like the word boy and then the letter C. Boise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say it right from now on after doing this interview. How about that?
I for the longest time, I think even after I moved here, was like saying Boise. And then I'll send you the video later, but there's like it's a thing that started in Vancouver, but now like whenever Boise bands play places, you'll have it's more so on the West Coast, specifically the Northwest, but you always hear people just yelling Boise. And it like all stemmed from this one this band Swarm Beating that was from here that was playing a fest, and like people just started yelling that. And now like especially if like any bands from Boise play Vancouver, everyone is just yelling Boise the entire set, like the whole time. It's fucking fun. It's weird, but yeah, this was fun.
Shout out to Boise Hardcore.
Boise fucking rocks. Boise on top. It's I was actually, we'll sign off on this. Someone hit me up earlier, and they just got a job offer to move here, and they're like, so is like Boise, like hardcore is like really important to me. Like if I move there, am I gonna like give me like a real like honest? And I'm like, it's fucking sick right now. Like it's on the come up. Like if I was going to like a younger person, especially going to shows, I would want to be in a scene that was on the come up. I would think that was really cool, because you could like be part of a growing thing, as opposed to like coming into a place that's like either already established and like is kind of just set in its ways. But like, yeah, man, Boise's fucking on fire right now. It's cool. I think that 2023 is going to be the year of Boise.
Archive Podcast is Josh Lyons and Greg Benoit, with creative support from Rob Antonucci.
This podcast is a product of the Rochester hardcore community. Theme song provided by Stand Fast.
Visit Hardcore Archive Podcast on Linktree to listen to past episodes.
Follow Hardcore Archive Podcast and Enterprise Hardcore Podcast on Instagram for updates.
If you have an idea for an episode or would like to have your band's music featured during the closing credits, please contact us at hardcorearchivepodcast@gmail.com.